Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by admitting something kind of embarrassing.
Hmm.
I spent the weekend reading like 3 different books on protecting your peace.
Mhm.
And I felt great. I mean, I was empowered. I was ready to take on the world. And then Monday morning rolled around. My phone buzzed with a request from a friend, a request I really didn't want to do. And I froze.
Oh, I know that feeling.
All that empowerment just gone. Poof. I stared at the phone, and I swear sweat started forming, and I typed out, "Sure, no problem," while, internally screaming.
It's the classic Sunday night warrior turning into the Monday morning conformist. It's incredibly common.
But it's so frustrating because on paper, I get the theory. I know boundaries are healthy. I know they're necessary. But in practice, it felt visceral. It really felt like I was about to commit a crime.
Right.
So today we're looking at a source that I think explains exactly why I felt that way. We're digging into the QofeBreak series, specifically episode 012, The Friction of Boundaries. And I have to say, this source doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't tell you, you go, girl. It basically says, yeah, this is going to feel terrible, and here's exactly why.
Which is actually much more helpful than the cheerleading, in my opinion.
Oh, way more helpful.
Because if you expect a root canal to tickle, you're going to be panicked when it hurts. If you know it's going to hurt, you can endure it. The source material here is basically saying that the friction, that uneasiness, the guilt, the pushback, it isn't a sign you're failing.
Right.
It's a structural necessity.
That is the central tension we are unpacking, the massive gap between the theory of boundaries and the actual practice of them. And I want to challenge you a bit here right off the bat. The source implies that this friction is inevitable. Is it really? Or are we just bad at it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there are people out there who say no effortlessly and then they sleep like babies. Are they just wired differently? Or is the source saying everyone goes through this grinder?
That's a really fair push. And look, there are certainly people, say, high on the narcissism spectrum or maybe low on empathy, who don't feel the friction.
Okay.
They don't feel it because they honestly don't care about the impact on the other person. But for the average person, someone who values connection, someone who has been socialized to be part of a group, the friction is, I would argue, inevitable.
So it's not a skill issue.
Not entirely, no. The source argues that the resistance is mechanical, not just emotional. It's physics. You're introducing an object, the boundary, into a flowing stream. Water's going to crash against it before it learns to flow around it.
Okay, I like that image. So we aren't talking about how to say no to your boss without crying today. We aren't doing scripts.
Please, no scripts. Scripts fall apart the moment the other person goes off script. We're doing mechanics. We're deconstructing the engine of why setting limits triggers such intense resistance, both from the people around us and, maybe more insidiously, from inside our own heads.
And there is this one line in the source that I've just been chewing on all week. It's the hook for me. Respecting yourself can feel like breaking a rule. And when I read that, I thought, yes, that's it. It feels illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But what rule? I didn't sign a contract that says I will always dog sit for you. So where is this rule written? Who wrote it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's written in the subtext of every single relationship you have. It's written in your childhood conditioning. We're going to look at how boundaries disrupt these unspoken expectations and why being clear, just plain, honest clarity, is almost always interpreted as being cold.
Yeah.
Or even mean.
And we're going to get to the darker stuff later, the power dynamics.
Yeah.
I think that's where the source gets really spicy.
It does.
It suggests that if someone completely freaks out over a boundary, it's not about the boundary. It's a diagnostic test for the whole relationship. But let's not jump ahead. Let's start with the basics, the disruption.
Right. The disruption of access and convenience.
Okay, so the source makes this point that boundaries generate resistance because they disrupt the status quo. Specifically, they disrupt access. Now, when I hear access, I think of like a VIP pass at a club or backstage at a concert.
Sure.
But we're talking about regular relationships here, moms, friends, coworkers. How does access apply there?
Think of it like a subscription model. In many of our relationships, maybe even most of them, we have inadvertently signed people up for the unlimited tier.
The premium package.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unlimited data, unlimited streaming of your emotional energy, 24/7 technical support for their life problems. And we usually offer this tier for free right at the beginning of the relationship because we want to be liked. We want to be seen as helpful.
I feel attacked right now. But yes, you start a new job and you say yes to everything to prove you're a team player. You start dating someone and you're available every single night because you want them to like you.
Correct. You establish a baseline of high access. Now, fast forward 2 years, you're burnt out, you're exhausted. You realize I cannot sustain this anymore. So you set a boundary. You say, hey, I can't take calls after 7 p.m. or I really can't listen to you vent about your ex for the 50th time.
And they lose their minds.
Because you have just unilaterally downgraded their subscription. You move them from the premium unlimited tier down to the basic tier. And nobody likes a downgrade.
No.
The source describes this as a literal loss of access. The friction you feel from them isn't necessarily because they suddenly hate you. It's because a resource they had has been taken away.
That sounds so transactional, though. A resource. Are we really just commodities to the people we love? That's kind of a bleak view, isn't it?
It is a bit bleak, but it's also biological. Organisms conserve energy. It's a fundamental principle. If I can outsource my emotional regulation to you, if I can just dump all my stress on you and walk away feeling lighter, that is functionally a resource.
We're providing a service.
You're providing a service. When you stop providing that service, I have to do the work myself. And that's inconvenient. It takes energy I was previously saving.
So when my friend gets snappy because I say, I can't hang out tonight, it's not just because she misses my sparkling personality.
It's probably a mix, of course.
It's because she has to find something else to do with her Tuesday night, and that's work.
It's work, and the source really emphasizes this convenience factor. A lack of boundaries is incredibly convenient for everyone except the person who has no boundaries. It is so much easier for your family if you just absorb all the tension at Thanksgiving. It is so much easier for your boss if you just work the weekend without complaining.
So I'm the path of least resistance.
Precisely. You are the human shock absorber. And when you set a boundary, you suddenly become the path of most resistance. You are making yourself, as the source puts it, less consumable.
Consumable. Yikes, that word is... That's a tough one, but it makes perfect sense. I'm thinking about this other idea you mentioned, the disrupted expectations the source brings up.
Right, the unspoken ones.
Yes, unspoken expectations. Is that what gets us into trouble? The fact that we never actually say out loud, hey, just so you know, I will not always be this available.
That's the trap. It's 100% the trap.
Yeah.
We run our relationships on these silent contracts. I will always be the one to fix it. I will always be the peacemaker. I will never outshine you.
I'll be the one to remember all the birthdays.
Yes. I'll carry the mental load. We never say these things out loud, but we act them out day after day. And the relationship stabilizes around these silent rules. It finds its equilibrium.
It's like a dance routine. We both know the steps without ever having talked about them.
And a boundary is you suddenly changing the choreography in the middle of a lift. You drop them, or at least that's exactly how it feels to them.
Wow.
The source argues that this is where the friction comes from. The terms of engagement are being changed unilaterally. You didn't hold a meeting. You didn't ask for their input. You just said, new rule.
And people hate that. It feels like a betrayal. I've heard that one before. You changed the deal.
Even though the deal was completely unsustainable and, frankly, killing you. And this brings us to a really tricky nuance in all this. The source talks about entitlement.
Right.
When people react poorly to a boundary, it often exposes a deep-seated sense of entitlement to your time or your energy or even your body. But, and I want to ask you this, do you think the other person knows they feel entitled? Does it feel like entitlement to them?
Oh, that's a great question. No, I don't think they wake up in the morning twirling a mustache thinking, I am entitled to your free labor, I think. I think they probably just feel hurt. Or maybe confused, where they feel like I'm pulling away from them.
Exactly. And this is what the source calls the interpretation gap. This is crucial for you, the listener, to understand, because otherwise you just end up thinking everyone around you is a monster.
Right. We need to humanize the quote-unquote villain here for a second, just to understand the mechanic of what's happening.
The source analyzes why saying no feels like rejection. It's because of this leap people make from what it calls a structural limit to an emotional withdrawal.
Okay, unpack that for me. Structural limit versus emotional withdrawal.
A structural limit is about logistics. It's just math. I have 10 gallons of gas in my car. The trip to see you takes 15 gallons. Therefore, I cannot make the trip. It's not personal. It's just a statement of fact about resources.
Okay.
So when you say, I can't help you move this weekend because I'm exhausted and I have no energy left, that is a structural limit on your personal energy.
Makes sense.
But the receiver doesn't hear math. They hear meaning. They interpret that structural limit as an emotional withdrawal. They hear, if you loved me, you would find the extra 5 gallons of gas. If you cared about our friendship, you would push through the exhaustion and be there for me.
Oh, I have absolutely been on the receiving end of that logic. If you wanted to, you would.
That phrase is a weapon. It is weaponized against boundaries constantly.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you would. Well, no. Sometimes I really, really want to, but I have a structural deficit of time or sanity or money. But because we as a culture tend to conflate access with love, any restriction of access is automatically interpreted as a restriction of love.
So they aren't fighting the logistics of my decision. They're fighting the perceived rejection. They're fighting the story they're telling themselves about what my no means.
Yes. In that moment, they are trying to soothe a narcissistic wound. It's not really about the moving boxes anymore. It's about their fear of being abandoned or devalued. And this leads to that other fascinating point the source makes about clarity.
Ah, yes. Clarity gets labeled as cold. I see this all the time. If I write this, like, 3-paragraph email full of apologies and justifications for saying no, people are often like, oh, it's totally okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Right.
But if I just say, no, unfortunately, I can't do that. I'm the ice queen. I'm a monster. Why is simple clarity so threatening to people?
Because ambiguity is safe, or at least it feels safer. Think about phrases like, maybe later, or let's play it by ear.
The classic non-committal blow-off.
But it's a warm blow-off, isn't it? It leaves the door open just a crack. It keeps the hope of access alive. It allows the other person to imagine that eventually, maybe, they will get what they want from you.
So you're saying there's a chance effect from Dumb and Dumber.
Exactly. It's exactly that. Clarity slams the door shut and locks it. I will not discuss this topic with you again. I am not available to lend you money. There is no wiggle room. There is no hope.
And people hate that.
And the source argues that we label this cold because it denies us the ability to encroach. It denies us the ability to negotiate or manipulate our way back into that access. The coldness label is a defense mechanism. It's a way of saying, your directness makes me uncomfortable because I prefer the warm fuzziness of your undefined limits.
It's so interesting because I come from what some sociologists call a guess culture, where you're not supposed to ask for things directly, and you're definitely not supposed to say no directly.
You have to drop hints.
You have to drop hints, and the other person is supposed to read your mind and offer. It's all about subtext.
Yes, exactly. In a guess culture, directness is seen as rude, as aggressive. And then you have ask cultures, where it's totally fine to ask for anything, and it's totally fine for the other person to say no.
So if I, a product of guess culture, try to use a boundary, which is inherently a tool of ask culture,
it's direct in my guess culture family. You're dropping a nuclear bomb at the dinner table.
yeah, it feels like a total violation of the rule.
You are violating the fundamental communication protocol of that tribe. That's why the coldness label sticks so well. You're refusing to play the game of hints and nudges and subtext. You are turning the lights on, and everyone else prefers the dim, ambiguous lighting because it hides the mess and makes things feel cozier.
Wow. That is a perfect segue into the internal struggle, because we've spent a lot of time talking about why they hate it, but the source spends a lot of time on why we hate doing it. The guilt.
The guilt is the internal police force. It's the mechanism that keeps you in line.
The source says, respecting yourself can feel like breaking a rule. We touched on this, but I really want to go deeper here. Is this just about being a people pleaser, or is it something more primal, more ancient than that?
Oh, it's absolutely primal. The source connects this to social conditioning, but let's take it a step further and look at the biology, the evolutionary psychology of it. For most of human history, if you were rejected by the tribe, you died.
Right.
You starved, or you got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Ostracism was a death sentence. So compliance was a literal survival strategy. Fitting in was paramount.
So when I'm about to send that text saying no, my lizard brain is screaming, don't do it, we are going to die alone in the woods.
Correct. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, is firing off danger signals.
Huh?
Don't upset the alpha. Don't alienate the resource providers. Don't rock the boat. The rule isn't just be nice. The deep ancient rule is be compliant so you stay safe.
But we aren't in the woods anymore. We're in an office park or a group chat. The stakes are much lower.
Our brains haven't caught up. That software hasn't been updated in a few 100,000 years. And the source points out that our modern society has built on top of that ancient fear. We have conflated compliance with goodness. Think about the adjectives we use for good employees or good kids.
Okay. Helpful, agreeable, easygoing, a team player, low maintenance.
Right. Not a troublemaker. And what are the words for people with strong boundaries?
Oh, difficult, stubborn, selfish. not a team player, high maintenance.
Exactly. So we have moralized the lack of boundaries. We have made it a virtue. We have decided that to be a good person, you must be an accessible person. And this is especially heavy for women traditionally, who are socialized from birth to be the nurturers, the community binders, the keepers of the peace.
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge gendered component. If a dad says, I can't, I have to work, he's a good provider. If a mom says, I can't, I have to work, there's this underlying judgment that she's neglecting her primary duties.
Exactly. So when you set a boundary, you aren't just making a logistical choice. You are challenging your own identity as a good person. You feel like you are breaking a deep moral code. That's where the intense guilt comes from. It's not that you've actually harmed someone. It's that you have stepped out of the role you were assigned.
It's like imposter syndrome, but for morality. I feel like a fake good person because I said no to something.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the source argues that this is why people-pleasing is actually a misnomer. It's not really about pleasing others. It's about managing your own anxiety.
Say more on that. That's a big statement.
Well, think it through. If I say yes to everything, I don't have to experience the friction. I don't have to deal with the possibility of your anger or disappointment. I don't have to sit with the tension. I am pleasing you to keep myself safe from your negative reaction and from my own guilt.
It's an avoidance strategy.
It's a defense mechanism. It's a short-term strategy to avoid discomfort.
So, in a way, people-pleasing is selfish. Or at least it's fundamentally self-protective. That feels like a paradox.
It is self-protective, absolutely. It's about avoiding the friction. But as the source points out, the great irony is that by avoiding the friction in the short term, you are completely eroding the foundation of the relationship in the long term. You're building it on a lie.
The lie that you are limitless, the lie that you have no needs of your own.
And when that lie inevitably collapses, because nobody's limitless, the whole structure comes down with it.
Right. Okay, this brings us to the really heavy hitters. The part of the source that talks about power dynamics and emotional dependence. This is where the boundary stops being just a personal choice and starts being, as you said, a diagnostic tool.
The reagent metaphor.
Explain that again.
In chemistry, a reagent is a substance you add to a system to see if a reaction occurs. It tests for the presence of something else you can't see. A boundary is a social reagent. You drop it into the beaker of a relationship to see what color the liquid turns.
And if it fizzes up and explodes...
Then you know there was a volatile, unstable element in the mix all along, specifically a hidden power imbalance.
The source says that when boundaries cause discomfort, it reveals who held the power in the dynamic previously. This hits hard, because I think we all like to believe our relationships are equal partnerships.
We do. It's a nice story we tell ourselves. But if I can consistently demand your time, your attention, or your emotional labor, and you feel unable to refuse, who has the power in that dynamic?
You do, clearly.
And usually, the person who benefits from the lack of boundaries is the one holding the power. They are the taker. You are the giver. Or rather, as the source frames it, you are the resource.
There's that word again. It's so dehumanizing, but it's also so accurate.
It is. And when you set a boundary, you are reclaiming that resource. You are saying, this energy, this time, this part of me, this is mine. You cannot have it on demand anymore. You can only have it if I choose to give it. That is a massive power shift.
You are staging a coup.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Small personal coup. You are overthrowing the unspoken regime of their entitlement. And regimes do not go quietly into the night.
No, they don't.
The friction you feel, the anger, the guilt tripping, the silent treatment, the dramatic sighs. That is the sound of the old power dynamic, fighting desperately to stay the same.
This makes so much sense of the, quote, irrational anger you sometimes see. I had a boss once who, when I stopped answering emails on weekends, he didn't just get annoyed, he got personally offended. He acted like I had insulted his entire family. And at the time I thought, this is so disproportionate. But this framework explains it.
He wasn't mad about the email itself. His power over his employees was demonstrated and reinforced by his ability to summon you at any time. When you stopped coming when summoned, his power evaporated in that moment. He wasn't mad about the work. He was mad about the insubordination.
That's really dark. But it explains why the reaction is so often a 10 out of 10 when the request was like a 2 out of 10.
And it also happens in friendships and marriages, which links directly to this idea of emotional dependence. The source talks about how subtle pushback against boundaries can signal a deep dependence.
Things like, you've changed, or you used to be so much nicer.
Those are the classic phrases. Those are massive red flags. If someone cannot handle a simple no from you, It suggests they were dependent on your yes for their own stability and emotional regulation.
Can we role play this for a second? I think it would make it clearer.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, I'm the friend setting a boundary. You're the emotionally dependent one. I say, hey, I really can't help you with your resume tonight. I'm totally swamped with my own stuff.
In a slightly wounded, passive-aggressive tone.
Okay. No, that's fine. I mean, I guess I just won't apply for the job then. It's okay. I just really needed someone in my corner tonight, and I really thought that was you, but I get it. You're busy.
Oh my God, that was visceral. I immediately felt a wave of guilt and the urge to backtrack and say, no, wait, I'll do it. Send it over.
Right. That's the hook. That response wasn't about their resume. It was a manipulation. I made my emotional state, my hopelessness, my potential failure, my victimization, your responsibility.
You held my sense of being a good friend hostage. I held our entire friendship hostage. The subtext was, if you don't do this for me, you are not a good friend and our connection is damaged. That reveals that I am using you to regulate my own anxiety and my own feelings of incompetence. I am emotionally dependent on your compliance.
And the boundary exposes that fragility.
It rips the curtain down. It shows that what you thought was a friendship was actually, in part, a support structure for my insecurity. And maybe I wasn't even aware of it until you said no.
Which leads us finally to the core philosophy, the anchor insight of this entire deep dive. Boundaries don't create distance. They expose where distance already exists.
This is the quote that changes everything. If you only remember one thing from this conversation, it should be this.
I want to really sit with this for a minute, because my number one fear, and I'm sure it's the listener's number one fear, is that if I set a boundary, I am pushing you away. I am the one creating the gap between us.
That is the illusion. That's the great lie of enmeshment. We mistake a lack of separation for closeness. We think, if I am doing everything for you, and we're constantly in each other's business, and I know all your thoughts and feelings, we must be close.
But the source argues that's not closeness at all.
It's not. If the only way our relationship can feel close is for me to suppress my needs, hide my true feelings, and act as your emotional servant, is that intimacy? Or is that a hostage situation?
No, that's a performance.
It is a performance of closeness. Real, sustainable intimacy requires two whole, separate people choosing to connect. You cannot have a genuine connection if you are merged into one amorphous blob of needs.
So the boundary is like turning on the lights in a dark room you've been living in for years.
Yes, that's the metaphor from the source.
Yeah.
Imagine we're standing in a pitch-black room, we're holding hands, and it feels nice. It feels like we're right next to each other, connected. And you flip the light switch, you set a boundary, and you realize that I'm actually standing on the other side of the room. And I've been stretching your arm completely out of its socket to keep holding on. The closeness was a painful illusion.
The light didn't move me across the room.
No. The light just showed you the painful, unsustainable position we were already in. The boundary reveals the truth of the existing dynamic.
That is terrifying, because it means I might flip that switch and realize I'm completely alone in the room, or the other person was never who I thought they were.
You might. And that is the real risk.
Yeah.
That is why we choose to stay in the dark. We are afraid that if we see the reality of the relationship, we will have to grieve the fantasy of it.
So we choose the fantasy of closeness over the potential reality of distance.
We choose the frictionless lie over the frictionful truth. But the source argues, and I completely agree, that you cannot build anything real or lasting on that lie. If you set a boundary and the person leaves your life,
then they were never really there for me. They were there for the service I was providing, for my compliance.
you lost a customer, not a friend.
Damn, you lost a customer. That really, really puts it in perspective.
It reframes the entire painful experience. You aren't the destroyer of the relationship. You are the stress tester. You're the engineer checking the structural integrity of the bridge before you try to drive your whole life across it. If the bridge collapses because you drove a small truck over it,
It wasn't a very safe bridge to begin with.
it was going to collapse eventually anyway. You just found out now, before it was too late. You controlled the timing of the discovery.
So this brings us to the so what for the listener, because we've spent an hour, hopefully, dismantling their anxiety and guilt. But what do they do with this tomorrow morning when that text message comes in?
I think the most practical application is to reframe the feeling of uneasiness. When you feel that knot in your stomach as you're about to say no, or when you see that flash of anger in someone's eyes after you do, you have to stop thinking, oh no, I did something wrong.
And instead, you have to think.
The system is rebooting, or the truth is coming out. The uneasiness is the sound of the dynamic shifting into a more honest configuration. It's the sound of you becoming a person rather than just a resource. It is a necessary, albeit uncomfortable, developmental phase of a relationship.
And can a relationship survive it? Can it get through that phase?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the source implies that this is the only way a relationship truly matures and becomes resilient. If the other person can navigate that friction with you, if they can get over their initial reaction and accept the new terms,
Then you actually have something real.
you have a relationship between two adults based on mutual respect, not on dependency or unspoken contracts, and that is infinitely more stable and more fulfilling than the unlimited access model ever was.
It's stronger because it's true.
Exactly. It's been tested and it held.
We've covered so much ground today. From the subscription model of access to the coldness of clarity, the guilt of breaking invisible social rules, and finally, this huge idea that boundaries are just truth tellers.
It's a complete overhaul of how we think about conflict in our lives. Conflict isn't always a sign that something is broken. Sometimes conflict is just the growing pains of authenticity.
I love that, the growing pains of authenticity. So we always like to leave a listener with a final thought, a question to, keep them up at night.
I have one.
Yeah.
And it's a direct challenge to that deep fear of abandonment we've been talking about this whole time.
Let's hear it.
We worry that if we set boundaries, we will lose the relationship. It's the ultimate fear. But I want you to flip that around and ask yourself this. If a relationship relies on your complete lack of boundaries to survive, was it ever really a relationship with you? Or was it just a relationship with your compliance?
Was it a relationship with me or my compliance? Wow, that just cuts through all the noise, all the justifications.
It forces you to look at what you are actually trying to save. Are you fighting to save a genuine connection with another person?
Yeah.
Or are you just fighting to maintain a convenient habit for them?
That is going to be ringing in my ears the next time I hesitate to send a no text. Thank you for walking us through this. It was dense, but I feel lighter.
That's the goal. Clarity is always lighter than the weight of guilt and resentment.
Amen to that. Thank you to the listener for diving deep with us. Good luck with your friction. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.